Episode 104 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. Welcome everybody to a new episode of the Interpretation Station. Now, episode 104 was originally meant to go like this. Now, yesterday I held a sort of workshop, okay? You might have seen me advertising it on the LinkedIn group and so on. And it was a workshop essentially for people who are taking the UN freelance test in January to go through text, French, Spanish, Russian. So this was the second one of its kind that I held yesterday. A lot of people came. Thank you very much to everyone who did attend. Just off the top of my head, the people whose names I remember, thank you very much for attending to Ellie, Hannah, Monde, Mohammed, Israel, Brandon, Dwayne. Dwayne was obviously there. Who else? Natalie, Malika, Anna, Mena, Asma. And whoever, if I've missed you out, I'm very sorry. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. So thank you all you guys for attending, and it's something I'm going to be doing more frequently. So just keep a lookout on the LinkedIn group when I announce another one. Probably have another one in a couple of weeks' time, for example. Just have one more before the actual exam, and then and even after that, I'd like to keep giving them because I quite enjoy doing it, and I think you can maybe get some benefit out of it. So, but anyway, so my plan was I was just going to record yesterday's. I was going to record yesterday's workshop and use that as episode 104, make my life a bit easier, but this numpty here forgot to press record, didn't he, when the time came? And I remembered about 5 minutes from the end, that I was meant to record it. So anyway, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to give a sort of resume, a summary of the text that we went through yesterday. So all three, we've got a bit of a medley for you today. Spanish, French, and Russian. Covering, so if you missed it, if you weren't there yesterday, you'll be able to see exactly what we did. For those of you who were there, it gives you a useful chance just to go back over what we did, look at some of the difficulties we encountered, some of the solutions that we found, etc., etc. And yeah, that's how we're going to do it for today's episode. So without any further ado, we're going to take it in the order we did it in yesterday. In fact, before we go any further with the episode, I should tell you now, big announcement, okay? The Interpretation Station website now exists. The beast is alive, okay? So listen, it's theinterpretationstation.org. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you now, okay? Look, there you go. Theinterpretationstation.org. There you go. You can see the Interpretation Station mascot, young Maggie, here on the front page. It's all done a bit amateurishly, okay? The presentation, I had to do it all myself. These things don't come naturally, these technological things, making websites. But anyway, look what you've got. Here we are, there's the home page. Then down below, you get to see a really stupid picture of me in a Victorian outfit with my two kids there. Give you a bit of background there. Anyway, that bit's not so important. The important bit is here, okay? You have all the subheadings: English, French, Spanish, English, Chinese, English, Italian, English, Portuguese, English, Arabic, English, Russian, English, Jedi, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Spanish into Italian. This basically is a compilation of all the work that I have put up on the LinkedIn group over the last year, all those site translations. Look, let's go to English, Chinese, okay? English, Chinese. And here I have to thank very much my buddy Zoe. Okay, so Zoe, who's been doing all the Chinese stuff. So look, here I have listed all the Chinese translations that we've done, episodes, and so on. For example, we go to English, French, and it takes you through a whole load, those French site translations that I've done. They're all about sort of 4 or 5 minutes long. You can just sort of peruse through them, learn new vocab, learn new tricks, whatever language of those 9 language combinations. If you're doing any of those, big thanks all to Sara Molinari, of course, who's given me so much help with all the Italian episodes. Brandon, with the Portuguese, and so I'll just keep adding to the collection as we go along over the course of the year or years. If anyone else wants to participate with their own language combination, also please feel free to let me know, to contact me, and we can make videos together. Anyway, I just want to let you know, spread that around among your friends, that the interpretationstation.org now does exist. Okay, in addition to the YouTube channel. So let's get back to the episode now. I'm going to scurry off into the corner of the screen, best place for me, and we are going to start with Cuba. Okay, so the first text that we did, as you can see hopefully on my screen, was a Cuba ambassador interactive dialogue with the expert mechanism on the right to development 48th regular session. Oh, by the way, this occurs 48th periodo ordinario de sessione, so it's regular session, okay, not ordinary, regular. Just occurred to me now that I think I may have, again, when I started working, I might have been tempted to say ordinary, but it's regular. Okay, let's just take you through it, and I'll highlight those bits that people got a bit stuck on. And what we said, okay, so Madam President, Human Rights Council, always a president. Remember, General Assembly, Security Council, Human Rights Council, ECOSOC. The big ones are always presidents. The other ones, the committees tend to be more chairs. Probably if you want to play safe, let's say chair. We are grateful for the presentation delivered. So this little comment I made here is I like to deliver things. I like to deliver presentations and reports. And what my comment was that if I was marking an exam, which I'm not. If I was to hear the first sentence, we're grateful for the presentation delivered, the use of that vocabulary would immediately set me at ease. I think if I was the person marking, I'd be thinking, oh, okay, this guy knows this guy or girl knows his stuff. So anyway, I like to deliver things. I mean, you can give presentations as well, but it's not a big deal. But I'm into my deliveries. Congratulations to the mechanism for the thematic report. Sus postulados y recomendaciones. So for postulados, I can't remember, I think it was Hannah. She came out with a very good solution. She said tenets. Now, personally, I prefer using the word provisions. Whenever it's a report or if it's a resolution, a decision, they do tend to talk about the provisions of a given document, and also postulado, the P, provisions, postulados, the po, pro. For me, it's an easy passage for my brain to just go from hearing postulados and saying provisions. So my advice is just to go with provisions, but tenets is not wrong. They are an important conceptual basis for. I would say avanzar en el objetivo principal, maybe furthering the main goal. Someone said making progress with the main goal, which is also fine. When I hear avanzar again, it sort of triggers the word to further. So yeah, as I say, in a positive sense, to further the main goal. Which is the realization or the achievement of the right to development in all countries. So yeah, I mean, this realization, I'm always a bit hesitant in English when using realization because it's a bit of a false friend, but I think you can realize rights, certainly. In all the main documents you'll see, in the Human Rights Declaration, Security Council, I think they talk about realizing rights. So I think it's perfectly okay to talk about realizing the right to development, achieving the right to development, implementing, whatever. We support, el enfoque, so I can't remember who it was, but so you want 99 times out of 100, you're going to be going with approach, I think, for enfoque, as opposed to focus. Okay, so stick to approach for enfoque. It tackles the relationship between right to development and Agenda 2030 for sustainable development. We said here that if you're in a real hurry, you could probably drop para el desarrollo sostenible. Everyone should know who's listening what Agenda 2030 is. We all know it's about sustainable development. So if you were falling behind the speaker, I think there you could perhaps just drop that bit, para el desarrollo sostenible. Sin tener claro dicho enfoque. Without this approach being clear, without a clear approach, it won't be possible to move properly towards full realization, full attainment of the right to development, nor to effective cumplimiento, implementation of the agenda, delivery of the agenda. Sometimes if those two don't come to me, compliance is my sort of bailout word, perhaps. You can see effective compliance with the agenda. It doesn't sound great, but it sounds okay. And you have the added bonus there is cumplimiento to the comp of compliance. So it would be better, I think, to say perhaps delivery, but compliance is fine also. While actors and entities in the human rights system, if actors and entities in the human rights system don't take this approach into account, so for actores, you can say, so there's a question about actores and entidades, do we have to change those around? I would say for entidades, no entities. Even I think for actores, you can say actors. Perhaps saying stakeholders is slightly better. Stakeholders is a very UNE sounding word, so maybe a sort of slight notch up, but actors is also fine. If they don't take this approach into account, if they don't factor in, no tienen en cuenta, if they don't factor in this approach, the important contribution that should be made by the system to sustainable development will continue to be, like it is today, seriously limited. A couple of things here. Secuestrada por la visión occidental de los derechos humanos. So for secuestrada, I think the idea is being held hostage here. It'll be held hostage to the Western vision of human rights, which is anachronistic, ineffective, and counterproductive. So we talked about anachronistic. I think you can say anachronistic. My one doubt with anachronistic is it's quite a difficult word to pronounce. So perhaps you could say, if it came to you, outdated, if it came to you in the moment. But I mean, as I say, you can say anachronistic, provided you can get it out properly. Inoperante, someone said ineffective. I thought that was good for being counterproductive. One thing now, Alexander, who's trying to add an English B, he was asking me about the different tenses they use in this paragraph. It's quite a long paragraph actually, and it is a conditional. So you have lots of sort of conditionals knocking around, and it's a bit mixed up as I see. So here you start if they don't take this approach into account. So that's as if it was to start a first conditional. In English we say if they don't take this into account, this important contribution will continue to be limited and held hostage. But here in the Spanish, there's lots of second conditionals, continuaría estando. So he was asking me, Alexander was asking me about should we follow along with these same conditionals like they have in the Spanish? To which my answer was, I think, if you start with the English, if we don't take these into account as the first half of it, the second half, it makes more in English, it makes sense to then say this contribution will be seriously limited, it's just a standard first conditional. Just go with what feels right. Don't always feel that you should have to follow the exact same tenses that you see in the Spanish. Sometimes I'm not 100%. So a native Spanish speaker could perhaps clarify if these tenses are slightly mixed up with this continuaría. Certainly here debería, which should be played by the system. That debería is a should. But I'm just wondering, this continuaría estando, have they gone with the right tense there, whoever wrote this? Anyway, just go with what feels right in English here. Okay, furthermore, por otra parte, I would tend to go with furthermore. We urge the mechanism to favorecer. Okay, someone said to promote, which is good. I like to foster. Again, f of favorecer and the f and the f of foster. Both working methodology, identification, compilation, and exchange of best practices. They're always talking about exchange of best practices, often tends to go hand in hand with knowledge sharing. Remember that expression as well. with regards to their mandate, not just at national level, but also regional and international levels. In conclusion, reiterate our support to the mandate's mechanism and wish you every success in your work. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was Cuba. And then we moved on. Okay, then we moved on to, this was Chile, okay, on mines. So I was at a big mine conference. I've said this in my LinkedIn videos and other episodes. I was at this big mine conference, okay, a few weeks ago in The Hague, La Haya, you see. This was in November. It was a meeting of states parties, okay, Reunión de Estados Parte, meeting of state parties, sometimes called an MSP for short, on the Ottawa Convention, Convención de Ottawa. Now, this convention is a very important convention. It's the big one on prohibiting anti-personnel mines, and it has a very long name to do. You'll actually look down here, prohibition on the use, stockpiling, production, transfer. It's a long name, but it can just be boiled down to the Ottawa Convention or the Mine Ban Convention. Those are the sort of short forms for that convention. It's quite an important convention that could come up. It could be referred to, not just in the context of this meeting, of the meeting of states parties, but any meeting to do with disarmament and so on, and weapons, okay? Now, I have to apologise for the presentation here. See, this statement was about to get binned. As you can see, all the creases here. But then I had a second look at it. I thought, actually, it's not bad text. So that's why you have these rather strange markings here on the page. So let's go through this then. I can't remember, actually, if it was a president or a chair at this meeting. I'm trying to remember. I think it may have been a president. Anyway, so as it's our first statement to the 19th meeting of state parties to the convention on the prohibition of the use, almacenamiento, this is an important word, okay, stockpiling, anything to do with weapons, they're stockpiled, they're not stored or stockpiled, okay, nuclear weapons stockpiles. Production and transfer of anti-personnel mines, you can also use and their destruction. Let me congratulate you on your appointment. Rest assured of the support and cooperation of my delegation in your work this week. This is very standard, sort of slightly flowery sort of thing they say. You know, since my first time taking the floor, they often say this kind of thing, por ser esta mi primera intervención. And all this business here, asegurarle desde ya del apoyo y la colaboración de mi delegación en los trabajos de esta semana. I like to just have, you know, you can either just go word by word, or it's good to have just a sort of stock phrase that you can just resort to if you just want to get it out of the way. So, I mean, you know, if you just say rest assured of the support of my delegation in discharging your mandate, you know, you want something that you can deliver fairly quickly that can cover all this. So, as I say, you can say rest assured of the support and cooperation of my delegation in our work this week. You can do it, just follow the exact syntax, but it's always good just to have in your head a sort of stock thing that you can just throw out in case you fall behind, in case you get stuck somewhere before, all right? Sin perjuicio de la cancelación, okay. So Dwayne did this bit. So he was saying notwithstanding the cancellation of the participation in this meeting. Sin perjuicio, I tend to go with without prejudice too. But notwithstanding is good. Cancellation of the participation in this meeting in person, formato presencial, in person. It's good just to know, especially in these days of RSI, it's good to just be able to fire that one out without having to think about it too long. Not, in situ or in the field for presencial. It's in person, okay? It was an in-person. So the meeting was going to be in person, and then they cancelled that. And what happened was we interpreters went to The Hague. We sat in the booth, but all the delegates were actually in there, tucked away in their basements, working. So that's why it was they cancelled the in-person format. We thank agradecemos la flexibilidad. We welcome the flexibility of the Netherlands. So often the Spanish will obviously say agradecemos, that we thank the flexibility. Now that sounds weird in English, right? To thank the flexibility. We would say we thank the Netherlands for their flexibility, right? So one way to get around that, is if you just say we welcome or we commend the flexibility of the Netherlands for adapting to the sad circumstances, the unfortunate circumstance. Adequarse, we had a little chat about adequarse. Actually, I think that's the best one here, adapting to the sad circumstances and helping ensure the holding of our annual meeting in virtual format. This spirit only reiterates the commitment of states parties to the convention. Okay, Senor Presidente, just drop that if you're in a hurry. Remember, as I always say, in the interests of time and as requested, we will be brief in this initial exchange of opinions. We want to we want to highlight 3 general ideas and then later move to 2 general reflexiones. I think someone said reflections, maybe general thoughts, considerations, maybe slightly better than reflections. First of all, the accession to the Mindban Convention. I think this was Ellie who did this bit. Ellie's quite recently out of college, and she did this very well, okay? Rather than going into the prohibición del empleo de minas antipersonal, she took on board what I'd said. It's just called the Ottawa Convention or the Mindban Convention, and she just went the accession to the Mindban Convention, okay, which is a perfectly good tactic, okay? You don't have to give the full name of the convention, so that's a very good shortcut. Se inscribe en el marco del compromiso de Chile con el desarme humanitario. So this whole thing, se inscribe en el marco del, basically means just reflects. It reflects Chile's commitment to humanitarian disarmament. I find myself saying, when I hear se inscribe, I often find I say like feeds into, okay? If I haven't, if I'm close behind the speaker, I hear inscribe, I'll probably say feeds into the, the context of the commitment of Chile to humanitarian disarmament, okay? Which is okay, it makes more or less sense. Reflect, if you give the speaker, if you allow him to get ahead of you a bit more, then you can get a more of a bird's eye view of what he's saying, and you could reduce that down to just reflect Chile's commitment. But it depends where you are. Are you right behind the speaker? Are you giving him space? So your solution will depend on, as I say, how far behind you are. From the broad prisma, we don't really talk about prisms, I don't think, in English, so I suggested here from the broad angle of human security. Seguridad, security rather than safety, okay? If in doubt, go with security as one of the pillars of our foreign policy. Countries acceded to, you tend to accede to conventions, okay, but you can also sign up to them. Here, I think for subscription, it sounds better to say the accession to the convention as opposed to the signing up to the convention. Accession is better, but here I think you can get away with saying either our country signed up to, our country acceded to the Ottawa Convention on the 3rd December, entered force 1st March 2022 with a firm conviction. Según señala el primer párrafo preambular de la convención. Okay, quick way of doing this. Según señala el. Okay, as per. Okay, rather than having to say as is stipulated in, you could just say as per the first. Okay, párrafo preambular. This is important if you're ever in a meeting doing drafting. Okay, they often so UN resolutions, they're divided up into a preamble, a preambular section, and an operative section. Okay. The preamble is sort of all sets the scene, and all the paragraphs start with things like recognizing, taking into account, aware of, okay, sets the scene. Whereas the operative part of the resolution are the real decisions, establishes this, resolves to do this, decides to do this, okay? And so when they're drafting, they'll talk about preambular paragraph number 1, or sometimes they'll call it PP, they'll call it PP1, PP2, PP3, etc. Ditto, and then the operative, they'll say operative paragraph 1, operative paragraph 2, or OP1, OP2. So you're probably not likely to get this in your exam, but if you start, if you're working in any of these international organizations, discussing resolutions, decisions, okay, they will refer to, this is often how most of them are set out, with a preamble and then with an operative section. So here, you could say PP1, preambular paragraph 1 of the convention. Put an end to suffering and deaths caused by anti-personnel mines which kill or mutilan, okay, maim rather than mutilate, kill or maim hundreds of people, for the most part, innocent, defenseless civilians, especially children. They obstruct economic development and reconstruction. They impede repatriation of refugees and IDPs. Just go straight in with IDPs as opposed to saying internally displaced persons. In addition to leaving or causing severe consequences many years after their deployment. Alexander, brilliant solution. Gave us so he's trying to add the English B, and he came up with it, man. So well done to Alexander for emplazamiento, deployment of mines. That was a really good solution. I was thinking planting. What do you do with mines? You plant them, but no, deploy is brilliant. Secondly, to reiterate, the implementation of the convention at internal level reflected a commitment of the Chilean state as a whole. It highlights the important coordination between the foreign and defense ministries. So, Ministerios de Relaciones Exteriores, you can just do foreign ministries, okay? The foreign ministry. Therefore, okay, se dedicaron los recursos. So here, we don't immediately know who. Okay, we find that the subject is recursos. Again, if you're right behind the speaker, and you just hear se dedicaron, and you think, oh God, who's the subject? You can turn that into a noun. You could say, there was dedication of human and necessary financial resources, or because it's in the context, it's all about everything that we have done, what Chile has done. We dedicated necessary financial humanitarian resources. We established the same year as the entry into force a national demining commission, man encargada, responsible for planning, coordinating, guiding and controlling. So encargado, maybe you could say mandated to. Remember, you couldn't use the word mandate. There's a tendency to always think it has to be used as a noun, but we can use it as a verb as well, right? Mandated to plan, coordinate, head up, dirigir, steer and control humanitarian demining activities throughout the country. Okay, that's an important word to know in this context, demining. Rather than having to go through the length of talking about mine clearance and decontaminating areas, demining covers all that, all right? As does the expression mine action. Okay, you could maybe see even mine action activities, demining activities. It's implicit that term just means clearing areas of mines. In todo el territorio nacional, I think Alexander was doing this bit, so he went throughout the whole national territory. You don't need to go into that level of detail. You can just say throughout the country, okay, that does the job for you. Now, that's actually as far as we got in that statement. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through the rest of that. Just going to finish off for you myself, okay, from tras un esforzado trabajo to the end, just so you can see what solutions I'm going to use, and then we'll move on to the French. Okay, so after lots of hard work, on the 27th of February 2020, the Foreign and Defence Ministries conveyed to the Implementation Support Unit. So lots of these conventions, by the way, have what's called an Implementation Support Unit, which is often known as the ISU. Okay, that's just something you will run into those. The ISU of the convention, full compliance by our country of the provisions of Article 5, finalising the process of the removal, destruction and clearance of minefields. This allowed us to incorporate broad areas into activities of national development for the benefit of the local civilian population and bolster their security. In financial terms, the total cost to date stands at 75 million US dollars, a considerable effort, but one that was certainly necessary. Thirdly, we would stress that in the majority, for the most part, the financial efforts at national demining were covered by the state. Nevertheless, initially between 2004-2007, Chile received contributions from Germany, Canada, US, the Netherlands, our current host, Spain, Norway, the EU, and the OAS. In view of our long-standing experience, we can now state that Chile is a territory free of anti-personnel mines, and we can share two thoughts with you. The feeling of national ownership of the country affected is key when it comes to implementation of the convention. In our case, we see this as the political will to adhere to the convention, to institutionalizing fora that are responsible for developing and planning the national roadmap, as well as providing necessary follow-up in due time, as well as for providing financial security. and having annually the necessary resources to implement the tasks required. At the same time, what was also key was the steadfast participation in the convention and its organs with a view to institutional strengthening. The feeling of national ownership has two dimensions, national and international. Therefore, in recent years, we've had the honour of cooperating with the member states of the Article 5 Committee on victim assistance and cooperative compliance, together with the current presidency. We assumed responsibility for presiding the convention between 2015 and 2016, the year of the 15th MSP, which was held in Santiago de Chile. Our second and final thought is to do with the same convention and its functioning and its operations. There is no doubt that it's been a successful instrument with 164 state parties and 33 states voluntarily accepting the prohibitions such as the regulatory framework of a policy of non-use. This reflects international legitimacy, bolstering universalization, furthering the inclusion of a gender perspective, avoiding politicization, building on the basis of the Oslo Action Plan, delivering on the obligation to issue high-quality reports which allow, through rigorous information, to carry out monitoring of compliance with the convention should continue to be priorities in our agendas and encourage broad participation in our work. This is key for maintaining the spirit that enabled the negotiation of this convention. In conclusion, we're grateful to all stakeholders who, through a personal and institutional commitment, are bolstering the convention, including the international campaign to ban landmines and the ICRC. Special thanks go to the ISU and its director Juan Carlos Ruan for his unflinching support that he provides us. I thank you. So it's a tough statement as it gets quite tricky, that second page. But anyway, hopefully that gives you a few ideas. Now let's move on to French. Okay, so the first one we did in French was by Togo. Now, I can't remember exactly what the theme of the meeting was. It's all to do about the vaccines generally, human rights. So let's see what the Togo said. Okay, I think it was the Human Rights Council. Madam President, Togo thanks the High Commissioner for her oral briefing or her oral report, compte rendu. I tend to usually just say a report for compte rendu, like a rapport. Here I think you say oral briefing, oral report. And we commend her commitment and that of her team to promoting and protecting human rights around the world. My delegation sadly notes that besides the negative impact, for négatif, you want maybe adverse as a synonym, of the COVID pandemic, various other causes such as political violence remain troubling sources of the deterioration of the human rights situation in several parts of the world. Sources of concern for the deterioration, concerning sources for the deterioration. There were a couple of the other options that were offered. In that context, Togo believes that, like the High Commissioner, that only a constructive, concerted approach, I think we use the word concerted, I think that's fine, will allow us to bolster the capacity of states to promote and protect human rights. I don't think you need to render aboutir here. Will allow us to achieve the bolstering. I mean, it's a bit of a mouthful, that, right? So you can just drop that and just say, will allow us to bolster, to enhance the capacities of states. Madam President, or just do away with Madam President, right? Give yourself a breath. COVID-19 reminds us that pandemics know no borders. That's a sort of important little mantra to know, shall we say. They know no borders, an expression in English. We think that nationalisme en matière de vaccins, so vaccine nationalism, est une solution aléatoire. This is a slightly odd expression, solution aléatoire, because if you look in the dictionary, you'll find for aléatoire, they give you stuff like random, haphazard. Now, I think in English we're more like to say something like, is only a fleeting solution, an illusory solution, which sadly exacerbates the risk of a multiplication of variants. Is that the word we use for them these days? Variants, strains, when it comes to all these different deltas and omicrons and whatnot. Are they variants or strains? Anyway, either I think would be fine, including the most contagious, jeopardizing the end to this pandemic. Hypotheke, I tend to go with jeopardize, okay? I think that's your safest bet for that. You can say, okay, calling into question the end of the pandemic. It's probably easy to say jeopardizing. And the global economic recovery. So the reprise économique. Don't try anything fancy with reprise. I think you just want to stick with the recovery. That's always what they're talking about, right? How it's going to be the big global recovery, which we all hold dear, which we all crave, to atténuer les souffrances, to mitigate the suffering, to alleviate the suffering of the most disadvantaged social categories, groups. I liked disadvantage was a good solution. They're most marginalized social groups, etc. My delegation reiterates in that regard its appreciation to all states who've established social assistance systems to minimize the impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable social groups. That's fairly straightforward. Togo, for its part, remains steadfast. Okay, for constant, I think steadfast is a good solution in its approach to bolstering the resilience of populations faced with the persistence of this pandemic and the inequalities and vulnerabilities that result therefrom. Okay, because in the French, so you're not expecting this to come at the end, qui en résulte. You could say which result from it, but I think it sounds neater, smoother in English if you say like which result therefrom or thereof. En effet, in French you can just drop en effet. Besides monetary measures, besides monetary transfers and other social measures established since the first hours of the pandemic. Moving to page 2. The Togolese government has decided on new measures on 21st August, inter alia, entre autres, often we'll do that, this sounds very fancy, inter alia. There is free of charge enrollment and schooling, free of enrollment and school fees starting for the year 2021-22. Okay, gratuité, free of charge. Okay, inscription. That's an important word. Enrollment. So you got two of the important words to know with schooling, right? Inscription, enrollment, and abandon scolaire, dropout. Okay, that's kids, dropping out of school. So just remember that as well. Abandon. For pupils in the schools and lycées. So we had a bit of a conversation on collège. There's so many things that collège can be depending on what francophone country you're in. It can be anything right from a secondary school to an upper school to a college. So I think you could just say schools, and maybe you could just say schools and lycées, okay? I think a lycée is, everyone knows, and even in the English-speaking world, native speakers, what a lycée is. So, but also free of it's also free of charge. So also free of charge water and electricity bills, otherwise known as utility bills, right? That's a useful word maybe to remember, the utilities when they talk about that sort of thing in more general terms, starting August 2021. In conclusion, Togo believes more generally the full enjoyment of all human rights throughout the world passe par, just requires, okay, that's just common French expression, passe par, it just means requires, bolstering international solidarity, multilateralism, and pulling together, or other ideas are joining forces and rallying around, mutualisation des efforts. These are the best guarantees for universality of all rights. Then we moved on to statement by the Central African Republic. Okay, this was a country sort of situation. I think perhaps it was at the UPR, Universal Periodic Review situation, the Central African Republic. Something you could easily get, one of these sort of country situations. This statement that we did from the Central African Republic, it was delivered at the Human Rights Council, but it could easily have been delivered also at the Security Council, for example. So it's good to sort of see how you would look at one of these kinds of statements. So here we go. President of the Human Rights Council, SRSG for Central African Republic. Okay, représentant spécial du secrétaire général. That's lots of these countries where there is conflict, where there are peacekeeping missions. Many of them have a special representative, the Secretary General, and you can call him the SRSG pretty much straight from the off. Honourable Council members, the CAR government, Central African Republic, you can use the acronym there, call it the CAR, welcomes the holding of this interactive dialogue on human rights in the CAR, and we wish to bring to the attention of the Council a certain number of concerns and progress made. Someone asked about la haute attention. Do you have to render the haute attention, the lofty attention of the Council? I don't think you have to really render the haute in this instance. I don't think it adds anything. It's just a bit of a African French flower. The government regrets the persisting abuses of human rights by armed groups, in particular by the CPC. It also, if you want to use a synonym for regrets, okay, it laments. Oh yeah, and I guess you can say deplores as well. Okay, le ralliement à la CPC de certains groupes armés. This is a bit tricky actually to do into English. I think we sort of talked about, certain groups aligning with the CPC for ralliement, or siding with, to side with someone, with the CPC. Maybe you could say it also regrets the siding with the CPC of certain armed groups who nevertheless were signatories of the 6th February 2019 agreements. This coalition was established with the goal of preventing the holding of elections. These attacks have effectively disrupted the international campaign. Empêcher la campagne électorale. I think, so disrupt. Usually with empêcher goes prevent, right? Here it seems to be more a case of disrupt the electoral campaign. They've disrupted le déploiement du matériel électoral. So the deployment of electoral equipment. We were wondering what matériel sort of referred to, and it's everything. It's basically all the sort of electoral infrastructure. I'm wondering if you could even say maybe the electoral hardware. Often when they talk about, at least about weapons, and they talk about matériel, I find that's quite a good solution, the hardware. So here maybe equipment, infrastructure. I mean, it covers everything, from the polling booths, the ballot boxes, all that sort of stuff. Disrupted mobilization of voters in exercising their right to vote, and led to a fire being started and the looting of polling stations in certain districts. So your electoral vocabulary is very important. Know your polling stations, your ballot paper, polling booth, words like turnout. Okay, so here we had a very good solution here from Israel, who was there. Talked about looting polling stations in certain localités. I think districts is a good solution for localité. There were also loss of human lives among the civilian population and MINUSCA peacekeepers, use of child soldiers. There were mass displacements of persons both within and outside the country, as well as the looting of humanitarian premises, des locaux de humanitaire. When I was preparing this before, I couldn't think of the best word for local. I was thinking humanitarian offices, premises. I can't remember who said that. Was it Ellie? Was it Hannah? I can't remember, but yeah, premises. Food insecurity has been heightened by shortages, la raréfaction. So it's talking about there's a lack of something. Okay, it's going to be of food. So basically shortages, and la flambée des prix des produits. So a good word when you're talking about prices that are suddenly shooting up, soaring. Okay, the soaring price of produits de première nécessité, essential goods. Basic commodities, basic foodstuffs, staples. Someone said staples. Excellent. Due to a blockade of supply routes towards the capital. Finally, the closure of school establishments in the rural areas due to insecurity. L'arrière-pied, I think Dwayne gave us inland areas, rural areas. So it's basically everywhere outside the city. Flyover country, basically. In terms of progress in terms of combating impunity. We would note the holding of criminal sessions of the Court of Appeal in Bangui and Bouar in 2019. So Bangui is the capital of the CAR, by the way. I don't know about where Bouar is, but it's good to know that Bangui is the capital. In 2020, 56 criminal cases were being heard by the Court of Appeal in Bangui. Okay, so a court hears a case. Tends to be the best collocation to go with a case, okay? Or there are other ways of doing that. You could say 56 criminal cases were just before the Court of Appeal in Bangui. That's another way of getting around that. But I like to hear. Courts like to hear. They have hearings, right? Audition. So the courts hear cases. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the criminal session couldn't be held. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this. I'm going to finish this statement off. But here's a classic example. Okay, look at this next sentence. Devant la CPS, 10 dossiers sont en cours d'instruction. He's not mentioned the CPS, this acronym. It suddenly just appeared from nowhere. Okay, this can happen. Maybe you get lucky, and when he's speaking, he'll give the full name for it when he's reading it out. Otherwise, like, what do you do? What I would do here is, okay, they're talking about courts. I know they're talking about courts. I'd probably figure that I'd say something generic, just another before the courts, another 10 cases are being heard. I mean, I had to look this up, so it's actually le Cour pénale spéciale, the Special Criminal Court. If you hear that, le CPS. I guess there's probably similar ones in other African French countries, but yeah, sometimes you just have to think on your feet. You have to just say, before the courts, another 10 cases are being heard. The appointment by decree of the President of the Republic of members of the Truth, Justice, Reparation and Reconciliation Committee took place on 30th December 2020. In terms of cooperation between the CAR and the International Criminal Court, the CPI, that's very important, okay? The Cour Pénale Internationale, the ICC, the International Criminal Court. We would know on 29th January 2021 the transfer of a chef de guerre, a warlord of the Seleka. Seleka is one of the belligerents, shall we say, in the CAR. Mohammed Said Abdelkani, suspected of war crimes and crimes against humanity. In electoral terms, charges have been brought before Central African jurisdictions. Or if you don't want to say Central African, just say before national jurisdictions against certain members of the CPC, the suspected perpetrators, the alleged perpetrators of breach of internal security, la sûreté, security of internal state security, and of grave violations of human rights and IHL. We would also note the decision of the Constitutional Court invalidating or voiding the candidatures both for the presidential and legislative elections of individuals suspected of diversion of public funds and of other offences. Infraction, offence is a good word there. I mean, this is basically détournement de deniers publics, embezzlement of public funds, misappropriation of public funds. So I want to have those two. You know, when they talk about financial crimes, it's good to have a couple of synonyms like embezzlement, misappropriation. Diversion is just about okay as well. At security level, the recapture of is underway of areas under control of armed groups by the CAR armed forces supported by allied forces. Or la reconquête, the recapture, the retaking. The determination of the government with the multidimensional support of MINUSCA, that's the peacekeeping mission, okay, the UN mission. Know your UN peacekeeping missions if you're going to do the exam. It's always good to be able to recognise them. They're not all. Most of them. The acronym is the same in English as it is in French, but not all. So make sure you you're comfortable with recognising those missions. And other partners has enabled the holding of general elections, which are underway. In conclusion, the human rights situation in the CAR remains troubling and highlights the need to continue bolstering justice and combating impunity, which requires the restoration of state authority throughout the country, to allow national or international courts to prosecute the perpetrators, co-perpetrators and their accomplices in violations of human rights and of IHL. I thank you. Okay, there you go. That's the French over. And then finally, we had some Russian. We finished off with some Russian. And we focused on the situation in Ukraine. Okay, so we had Russia very recent. Okay, so this was actually Russia. This was just a week ago, 15th of December, and it was a meeting. It was on civil, the space for civil society in Ukraine. There was a presentation of the report by UVKPC, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, not to be confused with UVKB, which is the UNHCR, Управление Верховного комиссара по делам беженцев. Okay, get those two, make sure you know which one's which. UVKPC is OHCHR. Okay, Madam President, High Commissioner, we are concerned by what the report says about the ongoing problems in the humanitarian sphere in Ukraine. So there's a few ways of doing this. Содержащаяся в докладе информация. You could say the information contained in the report, or concerned by the report's references to ongoing problems. I don't know, in English, what do we say? We're concerned about what the report says about, perhaps. I think any of those would be fine. Of the human rights sphere in Ukraine, okay, правозащитная is like the adjective for human rights, okay? There have been violations of the right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. So here we had a bit of a discussion, me, Malika, Anna and Mena, we were talking about, okay, narushaitsa, if you're right behind the speaker, you want to be able to turn that narushaitsa into a noun, okay? There have been violations. I guess we can say we have seen violations as well of the right to peaceful assembly. Or if you're feeling confident, you hold that narushaitsa in your head for a bit and you say the right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression have been violated. Again, it depends how confident you're feeling in the moment. Отмечается, okay, we note a worsening situation for civil society or deterioration of the situation of civil society in the lead up to, during and after local elections which took place in Ukraine in the autumn of last year or last autumn. Experts continue to document cases of hate speech, okay, ненавистнических заявлений. The easiest solution there, I think, is just hate speech. Threats and violence against journalists, politicians, and human rights defenders. This was Malika did. It was very good. So, правозащитники, human rights defender, which is often you have an acronym that's used, HRD. Assaults against them and damage inflicted to property. So just with damage, a good collocation. Then нанесение урона is to inflict. Okay. Now this is a tricky sentence. Объектами давления насилия становятся в том числе те, кто открыто критикует новый закон о государственном языке. So I think the way I would have done it would be along these lines: pressure and violence is being used against those who openly criticize the new law on the state language. Really, you have to let the objektami go past. If you just hear objektami, you don't know what it's going to be. Objektami can talk about buildings, facilities. You can maybe talk the targets of pressure and violence have become those who have openly criticized the new law. We agree with the conclusions that law enforcement, правоохранительные органы, I think you can just say law enforcement. I mean, I think Anna was maybe doing, she said law enforcement authorities. She rendered the organi. I think that's fine. But I also think in English we often just talk about law enforcement, are not taking any measures to protect these groups of the population. We share the concerns of OHCHR that this trend is contributing to the ongoing atmosphere of impunity and plays into the hands of Ukrainian neo-Nazis. Способствует. So I like to have contribute to. I've talked about this a lot. For способствовать, I like contribute to, содействовать, to facilitate. So I just like to compartmentalize them. Okay, so this contributes to this maintaining the atmosphere of impunity Развязывать is often unleashing. That's my sort of go-to solution for развязывать. In this case, I think it's like talking about playing into the hands of Ukrainian neo-Nazis. I think that's the easiest way of rendering it in this particular instance. We're extremely concerned by the closure of Russian language channels. We agree with the findings of the UN that... Okay, so Anna asked me about ornovci. How do we render ornovci? Like the UN guys, the UN people. I think UN people is not bad. You could say we agree with the findings of the UN people of the UN. Vivodi by the conclusions or findings that these actions are geared towards curtailing the freedom of expression, stigmatizing Russian language media journalists. Okay, подавление свободы выражения. So I mentioned here that often when I hear подавлять, I tend to go with suppress, but I always think there's a better word in each sort of case. There's usually a better word. So curtailing freedoms, I think, is a very good collocation. Curtailing freedoms to freedom of expression. And then we have, again, this is one of these compound adjectives. Работающих в русскоязычных СМИ журналистов. You could say so, stigmatizing journalists who work in Russian language media. That way, you're waiting to say the journalist, and you're having to remember this. Работающих в русскоязычных СМИ. So I think here you could just drop the работающих and just say to stigmatize Russian language media journalists. Often in these compound adjectives, often, not always, that the verb part of it, the работающих, can be dropped. But not always. Again, it's case by case, but it's good to just see how you would, just to sit down and look at it and see how you could render it. So I like what I've done, the Russian language media journalists. We are troubled by the growing number of attacks on participants in peaceful marches, peaceful protests in various cities in Ukraine. Very often acts of intimidation and violence are initiated by right-wing national radicals. This is quite a tricky sentence. Moreover, protection from the authorities and the law enforcement for the victims рассчитывать не приходится is not forthcoming. Okay, so literally it's talking about how these people, they shouldn't expect to receive any protection from the authorities or law enforcement. But once you have to sort of go along with it. You have to say, moreover, okay, turn the защита into the subject. Okay, protection from the authorities and law enforcement for the victims. And then you just have to tweak it when you hear this. Рассчитывать не приходится. It's not there. It's not coming. That support, that protection. So is not forthcoming. Can't be expected. Maybe you could say can't be expected. Protection from the authorities for victims cannot be expected. It depends what occurs to you in the moment, but that's a couple of ideas on how to do that. In conclusion, we once again urge OHCHR, and I wrote this out. I did this. When I serviced this meeting, and I did this, and I wanted to make sure that I finish on a high note, so I wrote it out here. Called on OHCHR to stop including in their reports matters related to Russian regions. So they're talking about Crimea here, basically, the Russian regions. As far as the Russians are concerned, Crimea is part of Russia and has nothing to do with any reports covering human rights issues going on in Ukraine. So it's important to know that position of the Russians. They think that the Russians think anything that happens in Crimea is taking place within sovereign Russian territory. And one other thing I said was also make sure, with the Russians, actually in general, always make sure you start well and you finish well. That's why I sort of thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to write this out to make sure that I finish on a high note. And finally, we did Belarus. Okay, it was the same meeting. Belarusian statements always tend to be quite fun to do as well. So again, it's an important topic, what's going on in the Ukraine. So if you're doing the Russian exam, there's a good chance you're going to get hit with something about the situation in Ukraine. So what did they have to say? Okay, the human rights situation in Ukraine has deteriorated. So you'll see I wrote deteriorating. Стремительно ухудшается. As I saw it, deteriorating more or less encapsulated the whole idea of deteriorating rapidly. I think you just say deteriorating, as I say, encapsulates both those two words. Now, I think we were doing, this was perhaps Malika again, and she said that poverty in Ukraine is now widespread, which I think was a very good solution. I think when I did it, I said something like, I received the text ahead of time, okay? I have to say, I think I said there is now mass poverty in Ukraine. Now, if I hadn't had the text, what would I have said? Poverty in the Ukraine is now at a massive level, perhaps. 67% of members of Ukrainian households consider themselves poor. Unemployment and low wages, oplata truda, wages, salaries, have led to an increase in external or foreign labour migration. So I was asked for внешне, whether you say foreign or external. I think you can say either. Maybe foreign is slightly better, but external is certainly not wrong. According to various estimates, the exodus of Ukrainian citizens stands at 4 to 10 million people. So whenever there's a number, I like to say stands, as opposed to составляет. Rather than just saying is, I think stands is good in English. The OHCHR monitoring mission to Ukraine has reported persecution of political dissidents. Okay, you could say opponents of the authorities, but it's much quicker to just say dissidents. That's a good word to remember with anything going on in these sort of countries. Political dissidents, those who don't agree with the authorities in place. The closure of a whole string of TV channels, lack of any notable progress in criminal cases into acts of violence that took place in May 2014 in Odessa. In Ukraine, there's been documented numerous cases of propaganda of intolerance, attacks on members of the Russian, Hungarian and other nationalities, on Roma and against foreign students. So we didn't actually get this far, so I'll just finish it off for you to give you a couple of ideas. Okay, фиксировать, it's to document. This can be, often I tell you that в Ukraine, that I'll often turn that locative into a nominative, into the subject, okay? Here, that would lead you in a bit of trouble, because it's not Ukraine has documented numerous cases, it's like the UN has documented, everyone except probably Ukraine has documented these cases of violence. So here it might be wise to say in Ukraine there has been documentation of, or we have documented numerous cases of intolerance, propaganda of intolerance, attacks on members of the Russian, Hungarian, other nationalities, Roman and foreign students. There is worsening discrimination against national minorities, including at the legislative level, in particular against the Russian language population. These problems were raised by participants at a special thematic event in Geneva on the 5th of October. Despite the documented cases of violations of human rights in Ukraine, we see no adequate public reaction to them by the OHCHR or the relevant UN human rights mechanisms. Again, правозащитные, human rights is an adjective. In that context, we underscore that the mandate of the High Commissioner, in line with Resolution 48141 of the GA, should be applied equally to all member states without any kind of political or other предпочтение, bias, as opposed to I think bias sounds better than preferences. Okay, so that basically takes you through everything that we did in yesterday's workshop. For those of you who didn't attend the workshop, I hope that's given you a few good new ideas in whatever language combinations that you're working on. For those of you who did attend the workshop, again, thank you very much for being there. Hopefully this episode can serve as a bit of a reminder of what we went through. If you've enjoyed the episode, please press the like button, and please, above all, make sure you subscribe to the Interpretation Station. Well, that pretty much then brings us to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Like I say, stay tuned, keep following me on the LinkedIn to see when the next workshop will be. My suspicion is probably not this weekend, but the weekend after, but I will announce it in good time. Thank you again to all those who took part in the workshop. Looking forward to meeting, it was a very pleasure to meet all of you. Looking forward to meeting new people. Keep following me. And all that remains to be said is that episode 104 of the Interpretation Station stands adjourned.
The train is now leaving the Interpretation Station.